Get a life, nerd.
Hey guys, Alkali here, and today we are making our own silicone molds. I make silicone molds all the time, like this one. This was used on a gem on a sword, and it was a very particular shape. So I just couldn't find a mold quite like it. So I made my own off a 3D print, and then I made 4 of these, and it was just easier for me to do it this way. So on Lady Loki, or Sylvie, she has these 12 gems on the side, and they're not quite laid out like this. They're laid out 3 together and 2 right here and 1 on the side. That's how they're laid out on her corset in the show. But for this mold, I'm just gonna put them like this, and you'll see how I accomplish that. And it's gonna be so much easier for me because I have a lot of these orders on Etsy. And by the way, a little segue there, if you like the Lady Loki Sylvie corset, I make them and they're beautiful and they're custom. And if you look real close at them, there's a lot of metal accents and really cool features. I don't just paint my accents on, they're like 3D and gem looking, they're really pretty. But anyhow, I'm gonna need to make a mold because I've been doing them the hard way. So I've been doing them with this mold. This is from Wilton, and it is a cake mold, so you can see the Wilton logo there. I think I got this one from TNT Cosplay Supply. I'll link it below. You can also find it on Amazon. And this is the mold that I was using, and I was having to make a ton of these. So really, it was taking me forever, and I would press it in, freeze it for like 20 minutes, pop it out, press another one in, and I have 7 of these orders. So, and each corset has 12 of these, which is 84 of these things. So it is gonna be a whole lot easier for me to just make my own mold. So let's talk about how we do that. So to make our own mold, we are going to need something to contain what we are trying to mold. So I'm going to use this foam base, and I also cut out 4 other additional pieces that are going to make the sides of the mold. And they will look something like this, but folded up once they're completed. So we'll start there. Move these to the side, and I'm going to take regular super glue and use this to glue every single one of these little gems on here. So let's do that. So the process is pretty simple. A little Loctite on the bottom, and we really want to cover it because if we don't, the silicone is going to go underneath this. So it's really important that we almost over glue it and have glue leaking out the sides. So press it on there, and see how I have this all organized, all pretty, and kind of how the layout is on her corset. Don't worry about that. You just want to mold them. It doesn't matter how you get them on here. It's just that we need 12 of them. And in case any of you are wondering, I have this collection of gems, and I think I got them at Hobby Lobby forever ago for half off. And you can see there's some eyeballs in here too and random stuff. So this is where I got these. And I just have used these gems for years. I've had them for like, I don't know, 7 years, about as long as I've cosplayed, and I've used them for tons of things. People use googly eyes a lot on armor for you know, rivets and stuff, but sometimes I use gem because I love that they're faceted and it just adds another cool look. So we're gonna do our 13th one here just to be safe, like I talked about. If you know cosplay and you've done it a long time, you know that like if you want 12 of something, even though you do everything perfect, one might turn out wrong. So we're gonna put the 13th on here just to be safe. Next up, we're gonna need a hot glue gun for this. This is a hot temp, more professional version, but you can use any hot glue gun, it doesn't really matter. And we just wanna make sure that we really contain these sides. So in order to make a good mold, we're gonna use glue here. And then we're going to stick this flush to one side. So we're gonna leave some overhang on this side. And the reasoning is that I don't wanna have to measure perfect sides and make a perfect box. This is meant to be like a super easy mold, and you'll see why we do the overhang. So glue on this side, flush edge down. I'm gonna push that in here right next to that. And you can see if you offset all of your corners, you don't have to cut perfect edges for your box. I've seen people do this in all sorts of containment, like containers. People do them in like extra, like Tupperware seems like such an old term, but it's like what my mom always said, so Tupperware. like old throwaway butter containers or solo cups. Like there's a whole bunch of things, but this was such an odd shape that I kind of needed to make my own box. And I'll make sure to get all these glue strands off of here later. We're gonna clean up the mold before we start it. one more side, and then we need to seal the sides. So really we're just making the sides now, but they're not going to be sealed. They're going to be kind of messy. So we're going to have to fix that up too. So while I'm kind of pressing this all together, I'm going to come in here and pick out all the little pieces that I don't want. You don't have to worry about any over like squish out from the oh my gosh, my words. You don't have to worry about any of the squish out from the super glue. That doesn't matter. That really gets absorbed by the foam, so it's not that big of a deal. And squish out right here on the glue is perfect too, because we don't care. We just want this inner area to be clean. All of this can look like a hot mess. And we're actually going to go in and we're going to put glue on all these seams anyway. Going to go back in here on this seam since I forgot to do it. Again, not a very big deal. You want it to squish out these edges, because squishing out the edges means we're getting super glue into all those areas, or rather hot glue. We don't want anywhere that the silicone can leak. So we're trying to just fill in all the gaps. Kind of like when you're caulking something, like if you've ever had to caulk a kitchen sink or a bathroom, you kind of want to fill in all of those crevices. Very much like that. And I tend to be like over the top on my molds. I tend to really, really seal up all the edges. But I don't like leaked molds. I mean, I've had one. I've had two leaked molds. And you get your first leaked mold and you never want to do it again. So yeah, get all your edges nice and squishy, just like this one is. That's perfect. Let all the glue squish out. And while this is setting up, I just want to show you kind of what we're going for. This is kind of a bigger, clunkier mold that I made for something else, but this is like a standard mold that you could find at like Hobby Lobby or Joann's. It's really thin, it's really floppy. These are not great for foam. And so even though this gem was close to what I wanted, it was too big. And trying to push foam into floppy molds like this really just doesn't work. That's why I really like these Wilton molds, because they're made out of a harder silicone. So you can really just press form and push stuff into them, and you know you're going to catch all that detail. Sometimes when you press into things this thin and this stretchy, you lose some of the detail because you distort the mold. Now, I've heard of people taking thin things like this and putting aluminum foil under them or bracing them somehow, but why would you want to do all that work? That sucks. So we're going to use a fast setting silicone. We're going to talk about that real quick while this is setting up. We want to use a fast setting silicone because I don't want to have to wait too long, and I want to use a silicone that sets up really hard. So I'm going to use Mold Star 16. It's platinum silicone rubber. It's from Smooth On. I'm not sponsored or anything, and it's really simple to use, part A, part B, so you don't even have to have a scale like this one, even though I like to use a scale because I don't always have measuring cups, and sometimes I just need to pour into whatever I can. So Mold 16 works great because it cures up quickly. And you know, it has these two parts, and what's nice about it is not only does it cure up quickly, but it cures up hard. It's like a nice sturdy silicone. So make sure to use a sturdy silicone if you're going to be working with making your own casts, because it just will last a whole lot longer. And if you plan on using foam clay like I like to use, then you need something sturdy to press into so you don't distort your shape. If you're going to cast with let's see, sometimes you can cast with two-part epoxies, or you're going to cast with like a resin, then the mold doesn't always need to be quite as solid. Okay, so we have our mold, and here's what it looks like. I used the 10mm Cosplay foam for this, but you could really use so many different things. One other thing that I like to use is Sculpey or any type of clay. You can use so many things, but yeah, I forgot to mention the clay earlier, but this is our mold, and it's sealed on all the edges, sealed on the undersides, and sealed on the and sealed on the insides. And the reason is hot glue is cheap, but silicone is expensive. So we don't want this silicone to slip through all the edges and ooze out before it has time to cure. So I'm going to take extra time, and maybe it's overkill, to make sure all my edges are sealed, but I really don't want to waste any silicone. Next step is we are going to measure the silicone. As I said before, you can measure it in a measuring cup and pour to the ounces, and it's just half and half. However, if you're working with a small amount, sometimes just pouring to like pre-labeled measurements here might be more than you need, and I only have this large cup, so I actually want to pour less than I need, and that way I can make sure I'm not wasting the product. You always want to make sure that you hit tare or zero out your scale when you have your measuring cup on it. So I put my measuring cup on, I zeroed out the scale. I want to make sure that I put this in small measurements. So I like to measure in grams or ounces. I don't like to make sure it's not in kilograms or pounds, because then it's gonna not be accurate, because you're gonna want to measure in small measurements, because you're measuring something quite small. So we're gonna take part A here. And I'm gonna pour not very much in, because the sides of this mold are fairly high, but I actually don't want a very big mold. Just tap that real quick because I didn't want it to time out. I don't remember how long my scale times out. And this should be about right. That looks like about 20 millimeters. I'm not quite to the 25 milliliter line. And so since I did 16 grams of that, I want to do 16 grams of the part B. Part B is kind of pretty. It's like a pretty blue color in the mold star. So 16 times 2 is 32. Again, you don't have to have a fancy scale. I just use it because I don't always have small cups, and if I want to weigh a small amount or measure a small amount, I don't want to have to go to the minimum milliliters on there. This is a fast curing mold, so we're going to want to move our scale to the side. Mix this very quickly. I can't remember the pot life on this, but when you order from Smooth On, they do a really, really great job of including all of their materials. I probably should be wearing gloves for this, so my apologies here. I'm going to make sure not to touch the product though, and make sure to wear something to protect your breathing, or mix in an open area so you're not breathing any fumes in. So scrape the sides. When you're working with silicone, you really want to scrape the sides. A couple reasons. If you don't mix it properly, it won't cure properly. And two, if you scrape all the sides and mix it all together and scrape the bottom, it'll pull out of your cup easier later. So I don't have to clean this cup when I'm done with this. I can just leave it, let the silicone cure, and then I can just, and I'll leave the knife in it too, and then I can just, this is a plastic knife, and then I can just pull it out in one big lump and the cup stays clean. But that does not work well if you don't properly mix the sides of your cup. Hopefully I mixed enough silicone. This is a very, very thin mold. These gems are not very high up. This is a small mold, so we don't have to worry about it too much, but there's something called a high pour, and you pour the silicone from pretty high up so that the string of silicone that comes out is thin and the air bubbles come out of it. So I think that's good practice. I'll try to zoom out a bit here. So I'm gonna put the cup kind of high up. You're not gonna see it on camera. And I'm just gonna slowly pour from high up. And what that's gonna do is that's gonna cause all of the air bubbles to come out of the silicone. So always make sure to practice doing high pours. That way you don't have any air bubbles. When you're done, your mold will look something like this, and you won't be able to see where your gems are anymore. Now, this is a very, very thin mold. I knew I had only so much silicone left, and I figured I had just enough for this mold. And if I was even more nervous, I probably could have made the edges a little bit tighter, but I made them pretty tight as it is. So this mold is gonna be just fine. It's a really thin mold, like I said, but it'll hold up very well, and it'll be exactly what I need for this small project. All right, so I let this sit about an hour, but it can really sit less. I was doing some other cosplay things, so I let it do its thing. And this really just peels out pretty easily. If you were using something else, you might need mold release, but I didn't have an issue. So here is our mold, and it is so shiny. You can tell when it's shiny like this and it's catching the light that it is going to be like a really nice mold, and that your foam is going to pop out nice and slick. There's no like detail imperfections in here. It's just really nice. So we went from this to this, and this will be able to give us what I was achieving before with this one tiny piece that I had to pop out over and over and over. I'll show you what this one looks like. So I'll pop out this piece here, and I was kind of making, this one's not quite dry, but I was kind of making these little gems before, and it was taking forever. So now I can just pop my foam pieces straight into here, and we are good to go. Here's an example of the gems in action. This is them on the Lady Loki corset that I make for my Etsy store. So you can see, so much easier. I have to use so many of them per corset, and it looks great. And depending on how you paint them, they can look nice and shiny like real gems. Thank you for watching, and if you'd like, I have another video on how to use foam clay in these silicone molds. If you like this video, make sure to hit like and subscribe, and check out my Etsy store if you like the product seen in the video.